Okay, so let me first introduce you, Dr. Dyerberg. You are often referred to the father of omega-3, and you underwent your physician training at the Aarhus University in Denmark. Dr. Dyerberg received his doctorate in 1973 on a thesis on lipoproteins in blood. He's a specialist in the clinical chemistry and has been chief physician and chief medical officer at various laboratories in Denmark. He is Professor Emeritus in Human Nutrition at the University of Copenhagen and holds several honorary positions, for example, Honorary Doctor at the University of Tromsø in Norway. He is past president of the International Society for the Study of Fatty Acids and Lipids, known as ISFAL, and he was appointed as a living legend by the International Union of Nutritional Sciences in 2013. He was honored with the prestigious Nutrition Business Journal Lifetime Achievement Award in 2014. Jorn Dyerberg was one of the pioneers in the discovery of the occurrence of polyunsaturated fatty acids, especially omega-3 fatty acids, in our food, and in the announcement of their beneficial health effects. His work opened up a whole new field of research that has grown enormously since the first scientific publications in the 1970s. Together with his fellow countryman, Dr. Bang, he demonstrated the unique physiological effects of polyunsaturated fatty acids belonging to the omega-3 series found almost exclusively in marine animals. He and his colleagues made their discoveries while studying the eating habits of Greenland Inuit Eskimo population, and they were the first to theorize that the rarity of coronary heart disease among the Inuits could be due to the eating habits and high intake of omega-3 fatty acids. Since then, thousands of scientific publications have been published supporting this theory. Current nutritional recommendations from health authorities around the world reflect these scientific discoveries and recommend people to eat more fish and/or fish supplements in order to increase the omega-3 fatty acid concentration in the blood. Dr. Dyerberg has more than 400 publications in national and international journals, mainly concerning blood lipids, omega-3, polyunsaturated fatty acids, the blood coagulation system, trans fatty acids, and prostaglandins. Important to note, Dr. Dyerberg is not only the father of omega-3 fatty acids, he has also done tremendous work in discovering the trans fatty acids in our diet and their negative health effects on our bodies. Okay, so between 1970 and 1982, you were participating in at least 5 different scientific expeditions to northwest Greenland, where you studied the association between fish oil intake and the coronary heart diseases found in the Inuit populations. Could you please take us back to that time and let us know how everything began?
That's a long story, but I'll try to do it as short as, but it's an interesting and fun story because, as you said, I had the privilege of introducing a new aspect in human nutrition, the concept of long-chain omega-3 fatty acids and their health effects. And this story, which is now a huge story with thousands of publications, started with an editorial in the Danish Medical Journal in May '69. Where the editor pointed at the difference in disease incidences between our co-inhabitants in Greenland and the Danish population in Denmark. At that time, Greenland was a part of Denmark. So our co-citizens in Greenland had another disease morbidity pattern than the Danes in Denmark. And among these were a much lower rate of coronary heart disease, which at that time increased dramatically over all the Western world. It has peaked now, but that's another story. And the editorial said it's an obligation for Danish doctors to describe and find out maybe why is it so. And my chief head of staff at the laboratory I was at in Aalborg at that time, Dr. Bang, came into my office and said, Dr. Dyerberg, at that time we were on third person. Dr. Dyerberg, you're doing your thesis work now with making a new method for determining lipoproteins in plasma. We'll go to Greenland, see if we could get money to that and go up and find out whether we can deduce why they have this low incidence of coronary heart disease. At that time, the only risk factor we knew of was actually elevated plasma or serum cholesterol. Today, it's peanuts, but I think we managed to collect $5,000. Okay. So with that, we went 3 persons to Greenland for 8 weeks. What we managed to do was to collect blood in a sampled blood in a fasting state from 130 Eskimos living in the so to speak, the original way. That was one of the obligations in the editorial before it's too late, meaning before the Western civilization, eating and whatever habits totally takes over. What we managed to find in remote areas and settlements in Greenland, 130 Eskimos, hunters and their wives, and managed to get blood samples from them. And we found out that they had a lower cholesterol and a lower triglyceride level. And we published that in The Lancet, a very famous article nowadays, pointing at this is one of the reasons, but it couldn't be the whole reason, because we knew the risk association and it couldn't explain the tremendous difference in coronary heart disease frequency in Danes and Eskimos, or Inuits as they like to be called now. And then we had these samples, and Dr. Bang had an old gas chromatograph that enabled us to do fatty acids. And we said to ourselves, there will never be one or some that will collect 100 samples from fasting, natural living Eskimos anymore. So do whatever we can and just publish it, because it could be of value later on. So, which was a tedious, a long process. Today, it'll maybe have taken 2 or 3 weeks. At that time, it took us 2 years of hard work from 8 morning to late evening. But nevertheless, when the tracings began to come up, there were 2 new peaks we hadn't seen before. And we didn't know what they were. We couldn't get standards for it. So I went to the US when I visited the Hormel Institute, where Ralph Homan, the famous gas liquid chromatographer and a very nice and gentle person, lived. And he looked at the tracing and said, Jorn, these 2 are icosapentaenoic acid and docosahexaenoic acid. And I said, say it again. But you see, they are found in fish, and he knew everything. So here I can give you 2 standards. And then we went back, and then we measured these fatty acids and published it again in a major journal. And then came results that gave a Nobel Prize, pointing at that from omega-6 fatty acids, arachidonic acid, could be generated prostaglandins, thromboxane, and prostacyclin that regulated blood clotting. Thromboxane promoted clotting, prostacyclin inhibited clotting. And that was from arachidonic. And we said to ourselves, why if from our fatty acids, especially EPA, there were generated new prostaglandins that had another balance in blood clotting, and thereby maybe hindered thrombosis, which is an effector for coronary heart disease, myocardial infarction. And we, with the cooperation with Dr. Wayne and his co-workers at Wellcome, the company Wellcome in Britain, where I went over and did the studies, we found out that it was so, that EPA derivatives hindered blood clotting, which we could measure by a new expedition to Greenland, measuring cutaneous bleeding time, finding that the Greenlanders had a bleeding tendency, a longer cutaneous bleeding time, and thereby a lower thrombotic tendency. That we published in the late 70s, and that was the trigger that opened up the interest. Hey, they do some biochemistry in your body.